Archie, the guy from Ghana is getting some difficulty coming on now. You're still getting on? You're still getting challenges, Edna? Try using your phone and see, huh? Try using your phone and see if you're getting through. Because we are about to start. I'm waiting for you because we're in to get this thing. Two emails are sending here. Sending 2 emails. to the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago and ideas to the world, because today we have a program for you, Point Forti and Brea, bringing to you all the constituents of our constituencies and of the communities and the national community, the reason why we should and we must repeal the procurement law, the amendments made by this government. Of course, you can't say Brea without saying Victor Roberts. So of course, my co-host for this session will be giving his viewpoints as to what. So I want to bring on one time, as we say in Trinidad, no sticking. Victor Roberts.
Thank you, Brother Tahaka. Pleasant good afternoon to the Honorable Political Leader, the UNC Executive, the UNC family, well-wishers, friends and family. Of course, today is no different. The United National Congress, over the past weeks, they continue to bring to you what is taking place within the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago. And today's segment really is dealing with what we will call the act of obtaining goods and services, which can be better defined as the procurement legislation. And of course, we know from the inception when the United National Congress in 2010, prior to contesting the general election, the Honorable Leader, the distinguished Kamala Prasad Bisesa, post in the manifesto of the United National Congress that if the UNC were to be successful in winning that 2010 election, one of the agenda of the UNC would have been to bring forth a piece of legislation, a bill so to speak, in relation to the procurement issues that have been affecting this country over the years. A matter of fact, not only had the Honorable Leader promised, but that promise was fulfilled in 2010 when, of course, Brother Tahaka, the leader, introduced that piece of legislation to the Parliament. Of course, we know for a fact that there is a number of intricacies that took place within that period, and as we discuss further, I will share some with you where you would be able to have a better idea, a better knowledge as to why the United National Congress is on this mission to ensure that that piece of amendment that was brought by Faris Alwari and the PNM government, that it is withdrawn from that bill, so to speak. So I will pass you back to
definitely
my brother, and we will continue our discourse.
So definitely, thank you, Victor. Now, Trinidad and Tobago, let's begin our discourse with exactly what is the plan of action. So we'll begin at the ending. The plan of action is that our political leader will be bringing to the Parliament a petition signed by you, should you have the opportunity to sign such a petition, on the procurement law. And I want to read the petition so that you understand exactly what it is we are talking about, so that you understand what you will be signing. And this will be the subject of our conversation. Joining us as well, we have attorney at law. He's making 10 years called this year, Edinam Kofi, so he's my age mate in a sense, as a professional. So Edinam from Accra, as you say across the Akwaba, but down here we say, where is he seen? So you can say good day to your viewers and listeners in Trinidad and Tobago. Yeah, I think we may have to test the mic there to see if we're getting the audio. Try again and see. So maybe we'll work out those technical difficulties. So in the meantime, Archie, if you could switch back to me, I will read the words of the petition while you sort out that aspect of things. Now, repeal, do not steal. Stop corruption in government contracts. So basically, what is procurement? Procurement speaks to government contracts. So you're sitting in your house and you hear the government saying they're going to buy some boats for the military from Australia, and you understand that there should be a system of checks and balances before they even think about purchasing these things, before they spend one red TT dollar on it. There is, of course, a law that was agreed to by both houses of parliament that this government has come under Keith Rowley to water down the legislation in Section 7 to removing the requirement of visiting the office of the procurement regulator, the scrutiny of the independent autonomous office of the procurement regulator, where they have security of tenure, where a politician cannot pull their job because they do not approve contract A or B. That is what this government has moved away from. Creating exemptions for certain deals, government-to-government arrangements. Of course, the road will not lead to the procurement regulator. It will lead to the partner, the Minister of Finance. Now, we cast no aspersions on anyone, but it is obvious to see if someone is engaged in an unscrupulous, corrupt deal, they will quickly choose to go away from the independent, autonomous procurement regulator, and they will go to the partner in cabinet, whoever he may be or she may be, the Minister of Finance. So we say repeal, do not steal. We, the undersigned, call on the government of Trinidad and Tobago to repeal the Procurement Amendment Act of 2020 and 2017 and restore the Public Procurement and Disposal of Property Act number 1 of 2015 in its original form. This was the most important instrument to fight corruption in Trinidad and Tobago. We, the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, respectfully demand that its integrity be kept. So the explanation, procurement, is basically a way of saying government contracts, giving out contracts. And around the world, contracts are used to hand out billions of taxpayer dollars. Right here in Trinidad and Tobago, this government has spent of your money by the end of this year in excess of $300 billion from 2015 to now. So therefore, it is very important that you ensure that the system for checks and balances is clear. So the new government of Dr. Rowley and Coleman promised to implement the Procurement Act of 2015 before the election in 2015. But what they did when they came into office instead was introduce the amendment, and this changed, gutted, emasculated the law, leading to even the resignation of one of the senior persons in the regulator's office. And the amendment removed the most important government contracts from the act, contracts between governments. And if we were to agree, my brother Victor, around the world, corruption and the persons who are the perpetrators of corruption, who are arrested and imprisoned, it is not the private citizen driving a taxi. It is not the private citizen lecturing at the university. It is not even the private citizen engaged in business affairs. We are talking about corruption at the level of the state. That occurs from governments.
Correct.
So if you say government-to-government contracts are exempt from scrutiny, then what you're saying is every government around the world is free from corruption. So now I want to bring the example down to the fella in Santa Flora, in Losiro, in Brea, in Chinket Park. Take, for example, the Petrotrin assets, pipelines, tank farms, the ones that are not being used, the equipment and so on, pumps and so on. And the fact that this bill also allows them to dispose of public property. Do you see any issue that could affect negatively the people in your community regarding this?
Well, of course, and if we should go back a little bit further, when we look at the structure of procurement under the People's National Movement. And we go back to the days of John O'Halloran. And we can take it from there and come straight back up to the waterfront project. A matter of fact, we can even look at the Napa and Sapa issue where Keith Christopher Rowley at the time, who were the line minister responsible, and we look at Keith Rowley in a book that he wrote that is called From Mason Hall to Whitehall. There is a particular chapter in that book where Keith Christopher Rowley said that a cabinet note was brought to the cabinet, and the goodly lady who brought the cabinet note, she was not aware of what was in the note. And so he says he rejected and he took objection, and coming out of that, the chapter said that added to that, he said quite clearly that he had objected to a hotel that were introduced into that project, and as a result of that, he was fired from the parliament. Now, if we go back to that issue, we will understand that Keith Christopher Rowley said that he took a position based on the fact that there were allegations of corruption continuously in relation to the government. And so he said that he took a position not to support that move in order to save the name of the PNM from further being implicated in corruption. So the corruption issue as a result of government procurement, it is something that continues to plague Trinidad and Tobago over the years. And not only so, but as a result of this, we had over the years a number of discrepancies in relation to finance, in relation to contracts given out to friends and families, just as what is taking place right now in relation to the Attorney General and the Minister of National Security. We have had this type of nepotism over the years, and when I saw that the Honorable Leader had laid this bill in Parliament, giving the procurement regulator the authority to scrutinize every aspect, every deal, every asset that would be sold, the regulator had an important part to play to ensure that we get money for value, to ensure that every contract have transparency and moreover accountability. But what we are seeing now by this regime is a blatant act of disregard for law and order. In that, I am still trying to wonder what are the hidden agendas of both Keith Rowley and Colin Burt. Because, Tahaka, if you can remember clearly, when this bill was laid in Parliament, the Parliament had put a joint select committee together. UNC personnel as well as PNM personnel. Within that joint select committee, Keith Christopher Rowley and Colin Imbert were part of that select committee to deal with this procurement situation. For some unknown reason, it is about a year and 18 months or close to 2 years that Keith Christopher Rowley and Colin Imbert refused to participate in the people's work. So when you say, Tahaka, that the PNM promised that they were going to bring this legislation to the Parliament upon winning the election, when you look at before the election and you see the behavior of the Prime Minister now and the Minister of Finance now in relation to that bill. I am wondering what really and truly is that hidden agenda that both the Prime Minister and Colin Inbert has in relation to this procurement situation, because they absent themselves for almost 2 years, and then to the end of the day, a bill that was passed with a 3/5 majority, Faris Al-Rawi brought the amendment to the Parliament with a simple majority, knowing fully well that they have the majority in the Parliament, and so that piece of amendment is sitting before the President's office for proclamation. And so, ladies and gentlemen, we must be able to understand that this piece of legislation, it is our business. It is not just the P&M business, but this is the citizens' business of Trinidad and Tobago to ensure that we get value for money. Because, as I said before, over the years, we had so much allegations of corruption. We had the Calder Hat issues, millions and billions of taxpayers' money, your money, continue to disappear without accountability. Today, we have the P&M withdrawing over 900 million US from that Heritage and Stabilization Fund. And today, we have no accountability as to the expenditure, the distribution of that fund. So to the end of the day, where that money gone? Apart from the millions and billions of dollars that this government continue to borrow from 2015 to now, where is the accountability for this money? And that is why this procurement legislation is of utmost importance. We as the citizens of this country must take a collective stand to ensure that we get value for money.
Definitely, value for money. Of course, we couldn't have said it any better than that. I want to just call Archie, just to pull him up on the screen. All right, so we have joining us, and we have another attorney that will be joining us from this jurisdiction, of course, Attorney Joseph Suku. But we have joining us from the former Gold Coast. They still have the gold, but they are now called Ghana. My brother, Edenam Kofi, he's an attorney at law. He will be making his decade in practice this year, 10 years. Call, and I want to bring him on, but first he can say greetings. Just greet us, so at least we know that the audio is working.
Okay, hi. Greetings from Ghana.
Okay,
I'm so happy.
Not hearing. Let's see.
You still can hear.
Keep it rolling. Let's see if at least we're hearing you in the background.
Okay. Thank you for having me on your platform.
Right, so we're now hearing you a little bit. Good.
Okay. You're hearing me.
Maybe we want to raise the volume a little bit more so we can be sure that we are hearing him clearly.
Yes.
Right. Excellent. So Edna, you can greet your viewers and listeners in Trinidad and Tobago.
Greetings from Ghana.
Excellent. Well, I see that you have been the first country in just as a segue on the African continent to be given vaccines from the COVAX facility. And while that is not that is not necessarily government-to-government arrangement, I know in Ghana, as with every country, the issue of procurement and the role of government in building an economy and a society with infrastructure and through state procurement and so on is important. So I would just want to lead off the first question to ask you regarding the legislature and shaping laws on procurement. how do these laws specifically fight corruption? Because the average man on the street wouldn't really understand. This is a big word, procurement. You know what it really means. How is that changing the price of tea in the grocery? How is that affecting my standard of living? So that is a very important question I want to ask you.
Okay, very well. Before moving to the issue of procurement and how legislature and laws shape the fight against corruption, I think as a preliminary comment, I would say that Parliament of any country is a very central institution. In its capacity as the primary expression of the people's will, and therefore has a paramount responsibility for combating corruption. And so, Parliament, in exercising its core functions of lawmaking, oversight, and control of, would need to be very robust. Can you hear me? Hello? Hello? Can you hear me?
You can go ahead.
Okay, sure. So Parliament has a very important role in terms of legislating, the conduct public officials. So as you indicated, to prevent the Parliament is a system of state tasked with making law to regulate public government, which we explained earlier on. And so, if there are no issues regarding how public officials should acquire goods and services, then we leave a back for people to behave anyhow, meaning that there are no minimum and there is no hold the public. But where Parliament rules, clearly calls out to prevent of the process. For instance, the procurement is to ensure that the fairness, the integrity of the system, and more importantly, the oversight is needed. Because without oversight, there cannot be checks and balances. So where then public officials are able to conform to
What I heard, and then we would come back to you briefly, right? So basically what you're saying is it is important to have it to ensure that we have proper oversight and scrutiny in the running of our affairs regarding public officials. All right? Now, if the government removes government-to-government agreements from the law, does this tighten restrictions on corruption, or does this remove or relax at least those restrictions that can result or encourage corruption in a country?
Looking at the law, you attempt to limit scrutiny and oversight of the procurement process is undesirable. And the government procurement process, I would not removal of application of the process. The reason being that this is not like
So I heard you there, but we'll have to pause at this point and we'll come back to the balance of the questions to the end of the program, provided we get the sound better. But basically, you are in a sense stating that it is not in the best interests of the country, the taxpayer at least, to relax restrictions on procurement. So exactly. So I'm hearing you a little better now, though.
Okay.
So much better now, actually.
Great.
So one thing I want to ask you is, how did the changes in the law, just one point, actually if you could reduce the volume a little bit. How did the changes in the law materially impact on scrutiny and oversight, specifically the changes that we've had? So whilst Ghana is still a member of the British Commonwealth in terms of the history of the jurisdiction, you have your own Supreme Court, so you have your own final court of appeal. Our final court of appeal is still at the Privy Council. All right? So you have the lower courts and the High Court here, and High Court of Appeal. Our Court of Appeal is here, but then the final, as you say in Ghana, the Jinyame Court, except God, the final court is in Accra. Here it's in London still. But notwithstanding that difference in jurisdictions, based on the law that you would have scrutinized in the short period of time we'd have asked you to do so, how did the changes in the law regarding procurement and the considerations of the Law Association Trinidad and Tobago, how did that materially impact on scrutiny and oversight in government contracts? And does this actually encourage circumvention of proper procurement procedure?
That I think, okay, so let me answer the question of circumvention first. It is undeniable that the changes in law will promote circumvention. As I indicated earlier on, when it comes to especially issues of public procurement, if individuals who are subject to the law are given the chance to choose between less scrutiny and tighter scrutiny, they will err on the side of less scrutiny, and therefore they will circumvent the law. It is clear. It is very clear, because from what I understand from reading the law, there is an independent regulator who is in charge of scrutinizing the process. And in this case, there are certain restrictions. There are certain there's a relaxation to take certain procurement out of the purview of that scrutiny. So certainly, that the relaxation would allow them to circumvent the law. But to answer your question of whether, in terms of the effects that whether the changes will materially impact on scrutiny and oversight, I answer that question in the affirmative, that it will certainly affect scrutiny and oversight. Let me use Ghana as an example. Our constitution provides that international business agreements should be laid before Parliament before they become effective. I mean, that's the constitution, which is our supreme law. We have had a number of agreements which the state has failed to take to Parliament for approval. I mean, the executive has failed to take to Parliament for approval. I don't know whenever you're in Ghana, you are heard of some of them, but there was one case, the Ferro Atlantic case, which had to do with a power purchase agreement between the government of Ghana and a foreign entity. The agreement had been executed, the work had been performed, and there was an issue that had to do with payment of money, which went to the High Court, and then the matter went on appeal to the Supreme Court. Now, in the Supreme Court, the issue was raised as to whether that transaction was an international business agreement. And the Supreme Court held that the power purchase agreement between the government of Ghana and the foreign entity was an international business agreement which required parliamentary approval. And to the extent that parliamentary approval had not been obtained, then the agreement was void, and therefore they were not entitled to payment for what they had done. Now, the interesting thing is this: the Attorney General of Ghana had actually given an opinion to this foreign entity, saying that, in their opinion, they did not think that the agreement required parliamentary approval. I mean, this is the principal legal advice. I mean, the reason why I'm bringing this example is, if there's express provision that you take the agreement to Parliament, there's express provision of the Constitution, the highest law of the land, that there's parliamentary scrutiny of the international business agreement, and the Attorney General gives an opinion that they are not entitled to parliamentary approval, for which reason no approval was given, and they went ahead to execute that. Then coming back to the state of affairs here, where there's express amendment of legislation to allow people to circumvent. As a lawyer, I think that this is a conduit for circumvention and abuse, because they would rather err on the side of less scrutiny than going through the other route where the regulator, they have to go through the regulator who scrutinizes the process. Yes.
Definitely. So basically, we are in agreement.
Yes, we are.
We are in agreement, and at least in the spirit of the law. Now, at this stage, I want to thank you, because we will be wrapping up this discussion in 23 minutes. We'll have to get back to Brea to get some specifics as our persons can actually get to sign the petition. If they want to get more information as well, in point 14, where they can go to do so. And we'll be calling on Attorney Joseph Suku, so your legal counterpart here in this jurisdiction, to give his views on it. So at this stage, I want to thank you for joining us, and you can continue watching on Facebook. Very much Attorney at Law, Ednam Kofi. Maybe when the lockdown is over and flights resume, and you don't need exemptions to travel, we can welcome you to this part
of the world.
I'll
surely be there.
All right, definitely. Thanks a lot. So, Victor, I want to get back to our discussion, because persons may want to sign this petition, and they may want to know where exactly they can do so, because they are very concerned with the government's ability to circumvent due process, circumvent the independent and autonomous procurement regulator. All right? Where can they get to sign this petition in Brea constituency?
In the constituency of Brea at this point in time, you can access the petition at the Palo Seco Grocery. That is Palo Seco Junction on the SS Erin Road alongside the Beach Road in Palo Seco. You can access it there. This week, tomorrow, please God, you could, of course, also join me at 6 p.m. sharp for another program out of library, and I will be informing the persons in library proper, that's the Point Door Vestany area, as to where exactly in library on that side of the constituency where you can access the petition, where you can place your signature. Because of course, we all know that this is a very serious issue, and this piece of legislation needs to be withdrawn from our law books. This piece of legislation, it makes room for corruption. It makes room for the lack of accountability, the lack of transparency, and to continue to put taxpayers' money in the hands of a bunch of corrupted politicians. You know, this batch of politicians, I think that they are the worst in relation to corruption in every single aspect. Anywhere you talk cents, dollars, is corruption. I remember under the pandemic, I remember that this government paid hundreds of thousands of dollars for 2 tents outside a health facility. 2 tents, hundreds of thousands of dollars. And this is what will continue to plague us in the absence of proper procurement legislation. The legislation that the Honorable Leader, the UNC, had laid in the Parliament, it makes room for accountability, for transparency, for checks and balance, and of course, minimizing the aspect of corruption, because we know human beings, we know them. We know for a fact that they always find some sorts of a loophole to create mischief. But this government, they continue to create loophole blatantly, disregarding law and order, and doing as they please with public money. And when you can strip the regulator of his authority and leaving it up to the hands of a politician, especially a politician as the Minister of Finance, then God help us. Brother, God definitely help us.
Definitely. Well said, of course. And I want to ask our technical man actually to swing back to both of us as we're on screen. So basically you're saying that in Point Fortin, you have, in Brea, in Palo Seco they can sign at Junction.
And tomorrow we'll have a definite place in Library proper.
And there'll be a place in Library proper. In Point Fortin constituency, you can sign it at, we will tell you at the end of this session, but the location is on Gover Road in Point Fortin. But before we get there, I want to bring on, Chief, you can help me bring on our attorney at law in this jurisdiction, Joseph Suku. Good evening, attorney.
Good evening, Mr. Beaker. So glad to help. And really, this procurement legislation, it's, whilst I hate to use the word clever with reference to the other political party, it requires a bit of imagination to understand exactly how terrible the amendments are. And we could go through it clause by clause, but really, it's two fundamental concepts that anyone would have to look at to understand. The first is that they've tried to reduce the scope of the sort of actions that are available for procurement. They've done that by removing certain types of activities, certain types of services from the oversight of the procurement office. And the other way is that they've tried to define that certain parties and certain relationships should not be under the oversight of the same procurement regulator. And what this means is this, in two practical senses. In the Act, they have gone to say, listen, with foreign entities, right? Foreign entities aren't subject to generally this regulation. A foreign entity, however, is not really properly defined, and it leaves us a whole range of, well, ambiguity as to who those parties could be. And this is where, as I said, clever is the word, because any clever lawyer would find a way to incorporate outside the jurisdiction. Any clever lawyer would find a way to create loopholes as to what is a foreign entity, because they don't actually properly define it. And you end up selling your patrimony all the way down the line to the same persons that the procurement legislation ought to be designed to prevent from accessing these things. The second route, though, which I really do think it's, well, again, clever, is this. There's no procurement for the selling off of state assets. That's Petrotrin. That's refinery. That's even selling off state lands. That could be airplanes, that could be PTSC buses, you know. It could be even something as innocuous as selling a piece of a government building and then renting it back from that person. Which
so
is
basically you're saying, Attorney, you're saying the sale of no man's land in Tobago, the sale of some of the now defunct assets of Petrotrin, all that scrap iron, must be getting some people some itchy trigger fingers to seal the deal on the transactions. So, but there's a point in the Law Association's letter dated 8th of December 2020, the last paragraph, 36, that states, and I want to get your view on this. In our view, the removal of oversight, scrutiny, accountability, and administrative fairness in the procurement process in relation to the treaties and agreements referred to in Section 7.1 amounts to constitutional impropriety, degrading public trust and confidence. Now, this is the Law Association of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, in effect saying in no uncertain terms that this procurement amendment bill, law, bill that they would have passed into law until it's proclaimed fully, basically amounts to a travesty and a trespass of constitutional propriety. I mean, am I reading it incorrectly in my bush lawyers spectacles? Am I misreading something there? Is the English bypassing?
No, the English is exact, and whilst you're inviting me to make comment on that particular document, I would unfortunately not be able to say much more otherwise, since at the time that particular document went out, I was a member of the council. Oh,
I apologize if I put you in any position, professionally.
Yeah, but I will tell you that I don't privately nor publicly disagree with Law Association said. You know, I was part of the group who issued this document.
Definitely. So now there's another. I'm getting some feedback actually, so I don't know if you want to mute some mics. So there's another. Okay, you have a question you want to ask?
Attorney.
Yes.
Right, one question for you. Relaxing the law in relation to international, in relation to international and
government to government arrangements.
Arrangement, relaxing that law, wouldn't that now create a more ease in terms of encouraging corruption?
Well, certainly. I mean, at the end of the day, it's not even just government to government, it's foreign entity to government. And when you start removing the protections of sovereignty the ability of Trinidad and Tobago to oversee its own relationships by virtue of treaties. You're essentially just opening the door wide for another country to walk in and say, listen, and I'm not calling another country's name here, that we have oil tankers and we'll come through your waters because you know what, we just bad so. Equally, if we want to start taking over the refinery or, building large developments in North Trinidad, we'll do just that because you know what? We don't need to be overlooked for anything. We don't need to have people looking over our shoulder. We'll do what we want as long as someone upstairs in the government says, yeah, that's perfectly fine.
And you see, this is very important, because whenever you have government arrangements and you have state enterprises, you have an organization, an institution called the Auditor General, and that individual is trusted with the responsibility of accounting to the taxpayer for every red cent that is spent on every single transaction, to the extent where the Auditor General now accounts to an opposition member in Parliament, in the Joint Select Committee on the Public Accounts Committee of Parliament, of which we have two. So the issue is ensuring that public procurement runs through this regulator, keeps the lid on any opportunity for any opportunist who may be looking at the bank account of the Treasury and trying to so benefit. Now, this is a law that was passed by three-fifths majority, a constitutional majority of the House, of both houses at some stage, but the amendments are being pushed through by simple majority. Now, is there any issue in general where that is concerned?
No, well, absolutely. The original legislation, procurement legislation, was passed with the constitutional majority because it was largely accepted that it affected various rights in the Constitution, right to property, in particular. So to arbitrarily decide that you're going to amend it, not only to take away the little bit of teeth it already has, but to create a whole new parallel regime, it's, in my mind, inconceivable to try to separate the fact that this is a fundamental weakening of the constitutional purviews that protect each and every citizen, whether directly or indirectly, whether horizontally or vertically, between each other and the state.
And I want to get to another issue there, so so in point 14, for example, we have the highway coming to point 14. It will be passing through Brea because you can't reach point without going through Brea, of course. And then we have other aspects. You have medical services, which is now going to be exempt in some way, some shape, based on the amendments made. Apart from government-to-government contracts, you had that other change. And you have the hospital in point 14 and so on. So persons are asking, how can this affect them? Corruption is a tax on the citizens. So for instance, if, let's say, medicine that the senior citizens need for CDAP should cost the taxpayer $100 million if it's properly scrutinized and going through a regulator. But if it's going through a partner in cabinet,
5 million.
We're not casting any aspersions on any member of this cabinet, but we are saying that there is nothing to prevent that cabinet politician, that Minister of Finance, from approving something for $200 million. And the taxpayer inadvertently loses $100 million because of corruption. Corruption is a cost to the taxpayers, a tax on citizens that does not generate any return. So the issue in this case would be, what would be the recourse? So I want to leave a few issues on the table for discussion as we wind up, because we are approaching 7 o'clock. Persons will want to switch to watch their nightly news. And before they switch, I want to tell them in point 14, they can sign the petition at Pinnacle Chambers. It's on Guava Road, upstairs the agro shop. So there's an attorney at law at Chambers there, and they have granted us the opportunity to squat in a corner with the petition. Not us, actually. The petition will just be there on its own. Of course, attorneys, as you can see, from the Law Association, are very concerned about this piece of legislation, and therefore that is why we are getting the support of attorneys across the length and breadth of this jurisdiction in Trinidad and Tobago. So I want you to leave us with some points on that, Attorney Suku, regarding the clauses that they would have brought in, the government to government, disposal of public property, and also corruption as a cost. What is the cost of fighting corruption and finding fault when persons run afoul of being corrupt? What is the cost to the state generally, not just Trinidad and Tobago, across the world, of fighting corruption after it has already happened, which this law, this amendment, could facilitate?
Well, the truth is, Mr. Obika, is that, frankly, corruption is very rarely sorted out after the fact. It's much easier to stop it from happening than trying to prevent it once it's gotten out. And the cost to the taxpayer isn't even letting it happen in the first place. You're talking billions of dollars could very easily disappear. Why I feel particularly strongly about this one is that I have parents who have comorbidities, for example, and the COVID vaccine could very well fall outside of regulation. Now, I can't visualize right now they're talking about rolling it out, but at the end of the day, we're looking at a situation where potentially not only is there a stricture on the pipeline because you're getting COVID through preferred routes, or rather preferred COVID vaccines, I should say, through potentially preferred routes, you're also going to have to pay potentially through the nose to get it. The tax on the people, well, that money comes from somewhere, whether it's from oil money, whether it's from the Heritage and Civilization Fund, whether it's from literally taxing the people into the ground. And to deal with it after the fact, Mr. Obika, I think you're just wasting time.
Prevention is better than cure, in essence, in this case.
It's massively better than cure.
And that is why I want to support the political leaders' call to the president not to sign, not to assent, or not to proclaim, whatever is the correct term, not to assent or not to proclaim, so that the law does not, the amendments do not in fact become law. What the government needs to do is repeal those amendments and bring the parent law. Now, at this stage, I also want to remind persons that Stara is in Dam Road in Point Fortin. So if you're in Dam Road in Point Fortin or its environs, you could find a Stara and she will assist you in signing the petition. Those other persons who may not be in Dam Road or may not be able to get there, they can always go to Pinnacle Chambers on Guava Road, upstairs Yago Shop. Now, at this stage, I want to leave for closing points. I want to first start with our colleague from Ghana. I see he's still with us. Edina Masi, you've stayed with us across the Atlantic. So you have the first bite at final words.
Great. I think that public procurement involves the use of money, taxpayers' money. And therefore, speaking as a lawyer, I would think that the tighter scrutiny the process. As society gets more people are getting more creative as to how to circumvent procurement, the procurement legislation. I would advise that the scrutiny be rather tightened instead of it being relaxed to allow for some motion.
Definitely. So you are calling for stricter regulations.
Exactly.
I want to turn to, so thanks Edinam for joining us, and I know it's almost 10 o'clock in the night in Ghana. Attorney Joseph Suku, any final points on this as we come to a close?
Mr. Obika, there's very little I can say that hasn't already been said. The points have been repeated over and over and over again. The fact is, I fear that we may find ourselves in an Orwellian situation. Simply put, in his classic treatise, The Animal Farm, he picks out one particular farm animal as representing the people who know better but say nothing. And that animal, Mr. Obika, was a jackass. I don't want to be that. And I would equally urge that my colleagues, that the people who are listening in, for those who have any concerns, equally avoid a similar description.
And so thank you, our attorneys on both sides of the Atlantic in different jurisdictions, but with one common understanding on this law. I want to end with our esteemed Victor Roberts. You will have the final word. So before you have the final word, I just want to say that in Point 14, you can go to Dam Road and check Astara if you know Astara. If not, Pinnacle Chambers is the place for you. Attorneys across this jurisdiction in Trinidad and Tobago have come out against these amendments to the procurement law, and that's why we are getting attorneys standing with their law association saying that this bill must not be made law in this country. So sign the petition and ensure that this government understands that the people are against it. Of course, Victor will tell you where in Palo Seco and where in Brea you can sign, as he will have the final word as we close. So Archie, you could zoom to the man from Brea, Victor Roberts.
Thank you, Brother Obika. You know, as the good book said, for a lack of knowledge, my people perish. You are fortunate, Trinidad and Tobago, that the United National Congress sees it fit to bring forth all the aspects of knowledge in relation to the danger of this amendment that the PNM administration brought to the Parliament and passed. Let us not allow ourselves to perish by doing nothing. The step that is before you at this point in time is the signing of the petition. You have the opportunity to sign and to make your voice, well, in this case, it will be to allow your fingers to be heard by writing. So come out in your numbers and sign those petitions in every one of the 41 constituencies in Trinidad and even those two in Tobago. Come out and sign that petition and let us fulfill the first phase to ensure that accountability is adhered to within government. So remember, you can sign your petition in Brea, Palo Seco Junction Supermarket, and tomorrow, please God, I will tell you just around 6 where in Brea proper you can go and sign your petition. So let us come out in your numbers, sign that petition. Let us get it in as quickly as possible, because remember, ladies and gentlemen, that, you know, I think it's Ras Shorty I had sing a song in terms of the lady with the white powder. Well, in this case, we have two men in government that will take away the soul of this nation as a result of that amendment that they brought to the Parliament. So may God richly bless you. Stay safe, Stay strong, and until we meet again, we out of here. Blessings.